Aiden Everhart awoke with a start, his heart pounding as if he'd just run a marathon. Something felt different. He glanced at the clock on his bedside table. 7 a.m. The same old digital numbers, the same soft sunlight filtering through his window, but a nagging feeling tugged at the edges of his mind. Shrugging off the unease, he swung his legs out of bed and stretched, hoping it was just the remnants of a strange dream. As Aiden made his way to the kitchen for breakfast, the world around him seemed sharper, crisper, like everything was just a little more real than before. He reached for the carton of milk in the fridge, but when he touched it, his hand phased through the carton, his fingers disappearing into nothingness. Aiden yanked his hand back with a gasp, staring at his fingers. His heart raced in disbelief. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried again. This time, his hand grabbed the carton like normal. "I'm definitely still dreaming," he muttered. But something told him this was no ordinary dream. The odd sensation in his body continued, a thrumming under his skin that refused to be ignored. As he sat down with his cereal, he noticed something else. The kitchen was exactly as it had been, but there was a subtle change. A photograph on the wall, one he'd never seen before, showed his parents holding a baby. But the baby wasn't him. Who was this child? And why was the date on the photo, 3 years after he was born? The room began to swirl, and in an instant, Aiden wasn't sitting at his kitchen table anymore. He stood in the very same kitchen, but it was older, the paint faded and peeling. His parents, much younger, were laughing and holding hands at the counter. The calendar on the wall read 1995. Aiden's heart skipped a beat. "I'm in the past?" he whispered. Aiden's mind raced as he tried to comprehend what was happening. This wasn't a dream. Somehow, he had slipped through time, something he had only read about in books or seen in movies. Yet here he was, standing in his parents' kitchen long before he was born. He could hear their conversation, as if he were right there with them. "So what do you think we should name him?" his father asked, holding up a list of baby names. "Aiden is my favorite," his mother smiled. "Aiden it is." Aiden's breath caught. He was hearing the moment his parents decided his name. It was surreal, like he was watching his life unfold from a distance. But before he could linger on the moment, the sensation returned, pulling him through time once more. The kitchen dissolved, replaced by a busy street. It was nighttime, and the neon signs and bustling crowds told Aiden he was in the heart of a city. He looked around, trying to get his bearings, when he spotted the iconic Twin Towers of New York in the distance. His stomach dropped. He knew exactly where he was. September 10th, 2001. This was a pivotal moment in history. He could feel the weight of it in the air, the calm before the storm. People passed by him, unaware of the tragedy that would unfold the next day. Aiden's first instinct was to warn someone, to scream for them to evacuate the towers, to stop the disaster before it happened. But what could he do? How could he change something so monumental? His head spun with the moral implications of time travel. Was he meant to alter history, or was he simply an observer? The responsibility felt crushing. But before he could decide, the world shifted again. This time, Aiden found himself standing in a classroom. He blinked, recognizing the space immediately. It was his high school history class. There he was, a younger version of himself, sitting at the front of the room, doodling in his notebook, while the teacher lectured about ancient Rome. A wave of nostalgia washed over him. "Come on, younger me, pay attention," Aiden chuckled to himself. The bell rang, and his younger self packed up his things, unaware of the older version of himself standing just a few feet away. Aiden watched the scene unfold, a little wistful, remembering the simplicity of those days. But then, the scene shifted again, and Aiden was thrust into a place he didn't recognize. He stood in a futuristic city, the buildings gleaming with glass and metal, flying vehicles zipping through the air. The people around him wore sleek, minimalist clothing, and strange holographic displays floated in the air. "What year is this?" Aiden whispered, stunned by the sight. A nearby newsstand caught his eye, and he rushed over, scanning the date on the digital display. August 17th, 2075. Aiden's jaw dropped. He was in the future, and not just any future, his future. He looked around, wondering what had become of him. Was he still alive? What had he accomplished? Was this world shaped by decisions he had yet to make? As if in answer, the sensation returned. Aiden felt the familiar pull of time, and once again the world around him faded. He awoke back in his bedroom, heart pounding. His clock read 8 a.m. Only an hour had passed, but it felt like a lifetime. Aiden sat up, trying to process everything he had experienced. The past, the present, the future. All of it had been within his reach, just for a brief moment. But then something clicked. He remembered the feeling, the tug under his skin, the pull of time. He could still feel it, faint but present. He hadn't lost the ability yet. The thought filled him with excitement and fear. What would he do with the remaining time? How much longer could he travel through history? He grabbed his phone, scrolling through news headlines, trying to make sense of it all. But then his phone glitched, the screen flickering as it displayed a countdown, 23 hours remaining. Aiden's breath caught. He had 23 hours left to time travel, to explore the past and the future, to understand what it all meant. The possibilities stretched out before him, endless and overwhelming. Should he visit more moments from his past, find out what happened to loved ones in the future, or witness historical events unfold firsthand? But more importantly, what would he do with those 23 hours that would leave a lasting impact? With a determined look, Aiden stood up and took a deep breath. He had one day left to time travel, and he wasn't going to waste a single second.